Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I am excited to be here today I feel this giddiness actually, because we're going to be talking about inspiring the lust, trust, and devotion of a strong woman. And I'm here today with someone who I have worked with. We've been colleagues for many, many years, and I'm really thrilled to have you here. So GS, thank you for being here.
Good morning, Shane. It's great to be here. And you're being too modest. You used to be my coach.
Well, I wasn't sure. I wasn't going to out that. But now that you've said it, right. Yeah. Okay, now it's out.
That's out.
So, and you've written a book and you've been doing your own work for a decade or so. So I'm thrilled to have you here and thrilled to support you and thrilled for other men and people to hear what you are up to. So for those who don't know, I'll give you a quick intro. That GS coaches men in relationship how to live, love, and lead from their masculine core. He's been a student and creator in the field of men's work for 10 years. And through this lens of masculine leadership, he also pulls in principles from a variety of fields: psychology, martial arts, tango, meditation, and BDSM. All of his writings are filtered through the laboratory of his clients' real-world long-term relationships to see what actually works and what doesn't. And in his past life, he was a high-tech executive in sales and marketing for 16 years. And 3 of the companies he was with were acquired, including one he founded. And so the leadership practices of Silicon Valley, based on clarity and inspiration rather than control, are a major influence on the model of masculine leadership he shares with his clients. So thank you so much for being here. And I have a particular love when men who come from Silicon Valley or high tech and, leadership come into this realm of inspiring lust and trust and devotion and man-woman dynamics, because I think there are certain things that I can say from a woman's perspective that can seem a little fluffy until, you as a man will say them, and then somehow it can make more sense. So, I just love that we can each be heard in different ways. And thank you for bringing your perspectives on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I love talking about this, and I love talking about it with you. So I'm excited we're doing this.
Yeah. So let's start with what had you write this? What had you, think about strong women in particular, and then lust, trust, and devotion?
Yeah, I was married way back when for 10 years, and I was married to a very strong woman. And obviously it didn't work out. It was divorced 10, 11 years ago. Yeah. And that was horrible. I felt like a failure in relationship. I felt like a failure for my family. And it really provided the fuel for me to figure out a better way, because by the end of that marriage, I was just trying to avoid making her upset. And she was so close to me at that point, and it was painful for me. And then after that, I went into after some period of time, went into a relationship with another strong woman who
I think
also
I
had a
sense a
very,
pattern here.
yeah, exactly. I keep doing this.
Yeah.
Um, but she also had a very strong feminine side, and both of us were into David Data's work, who's
Mhm.
obviously a major influence on not only me but a lot of people talking about this. And so that was the practice ground. That was the laboratory to really try out a lot of the men's work skills that I had been learning over the years.
Yeah.
And I learned through real time practice what lit her up and what shut her down. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's a hard code to crack. It's a very
Yeah.
hard code to crack. Most men don't get it. And me coming out of the business world, I know what it's like to be in your head all the time, and
Mhm.
you're going to be in this logic pattern that literally will have you not understanding why your woman is acting the way she is. And so I knew there had to be a better way. And over the years, just really practicing, learning, codifying, observing these patterns of what worked and what didn't. At some point, I said, I got to start writing this down.
Yes.
And I just wrote notes every day, and suddenly it grew to 10 pages of notes and 20 pages of notes. And
Get into your book.
yeah, and so it slowly came together. And at some point I said, you know what, I think I can put this into a book.
Yeah.
And my motivation for this is the last thing I'll say, is just I hated that my kids had to go through a split household.
Yep.
And so my motivation is, if I can help any other man save his relationship, or particularly save his marriage, if I can help one kid out there from having to
Go
have a
through.
split home,
Mhm.
then I'll feel very satisfied. And that's my motivation.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And, being a, what would I call myself, a divorcee, or having
Mhm.
having a split household too, I can see the challenges of that for children. And the question that keeps coming up for me is, and I don't know if you'll have an answer to this yet, we might need to get into more of this, but do you have a sense overall of what strong women are tending to want or look for that they're not getting when they're shutting down and, becoming more cold and rigid?
Yeah. Structure and clarity are the two words that come up if I had to create to be as succinct as possible.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women these days are out in the world making their way. They're in the professional world. They're getting shit done.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of them tell me when they come home into their relationship, sometimes they want to let down. Now they can stay in that masculine energy that they need at work to get things done. Um, but it doesn't create that polarity in the intimacy that is going to have her relax and go into a state that's really, and quite frankly, enjoyable
Yeah.
from her male partner.
It's
Um,
so interesting because I can feel my own, and this has come up for me, especially in, this pandemic time where my masculine has been more activated and I've been more
mm,
in that,
mm,
survival mode of like, I've got to do this and I've got to get this done. And I can feel, I can verify, right? Like from that place, the intimacy, the polarity, the love, like it doesn't flow in the same
yeah,
way.
yeah, that's exactly it. It's a switch,
Yeah.
and what I'm coaching men to do is, okay, how can you flip that switch for her so she can go into her feminine? You can't ask her to do it. You can't demand that she do it.
No.
And quite frankly, she probably can't even force herself to do it in most cases.
Yeah.
What I'm coaching is, hey, men, set up the conditions where she'll just organically flow into that feminine state. So
Yeah.
as I write about in the book, provide some structure, have the night plan for her so she can just sit back and go, okay, honey, I'm on your ride. Let's do it. Let's do the plan that you came up with. And so it's providing that kind of structure in the relationship. And in the book, I go into all kinds of examples of that. But I found that's one thing that can allow, my feminine partner to relax.
To relax. So you take on, right, I'm going to create a structure here. Here's what's going to happen. And then how do you navigate if she comes back with either, well, that's not exactly what I wanted,
Yeah.
or I'm not really happy with that.
Yeah.
What do you do then?
Yeah. Great question. So what I coach men to do is For the most of the time, what they do is say, "Hey, babe, here's what I've got in mind. Dot 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 dot. How does that land for you, or how does
Oh
that
yeah,
feel to you?" You know,
yeah,
and so it's not like, "Hey, we're doing it my way or the highway," which
yeah.
is in most cases is not going to feel good. Um, but it's offering the structure, and it's a little bit like tango. You know, you mentioned tango earlier as one of
Yeah,
my influences. You know, in tango as the lead, you don't force her body where you
right.
want to
Kind of
go.
pushing her around.
Yeah, you actually open up and create space and invite her to move through that space.
Mm,
And that's the style I try to coach for these men is you're going to get just as many points for coming up with a plan that she's not 100% wild about.
yeah.
Um, but you're initiating the structure. So if you present it in a way that then invites her input into it, and then she gives her input, and then you synthesize it into maybe a new direction. How does that feel for you, babe? All right, boom. But you can't just ask her, what do you want to do? You have to come with something. You have to give to get.
Mm.
The easiest way to say that.
Yeah, and I love it. It's so interesting because I always feel a little bit guilty as a woman who, I identify as a strong woman who I really like when there's a plan, but I also, again, if someone just told me what to do and there was no choice in there, I would not be that happy with that.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And that's, oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I really like when you said, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking." And so how does that seem to you?
Yeah.
My whole nervous system relaxed.
Good. Yeah. And that's the art of it that men need to realize. It's not just the words you say, it's how you offer it.
Yeah.
So it's what you just described as like the art of the whole thing that I'm
Right. That
trying
was
to.
the other thought I had too was, if there's like an apologetic coming to me of like, oh, I don't know, maybe I was thinking we could do this. Like, is that okay with you? That kind of uncertainty or sense of, I don't, maybe I'm doing this wrong, but this is what I'm supposed to do because Gregory told me how. So, you know, like, yeah, that it's not just the words, there's a way of being there. And I'm wondering how you help men access that.
Well, there's a couple elements to that. One is number one, men, you've got to be in tune with what you want. So be in tune with your desire. So that's chapter 10 in the book is all about desire and how do you cultivate, like, what do you want?
Yeah.
'Cause if you don't know what you want, it's going to come off floppy, kind of like Shane, the way you just described it.
Hmm.
So number one, get in touch with actually what you really want. That's the biggest thing. And the second thing is stop being so damn afraid to displease her. You know,
Yes.
that floppy way that you described it is that's the man. He's fearful of sort of upsetting you or saying something that you didn't like,
Yeah.
um, or wanting something that you don't want. And so men, you've got to get in touch with that fear. It's okay to say, hey, this is really what I'd love to do, babe, and just like stand for something. So I
Yes.
think that's the short answer is number one, be in touch with your own desires. And number two, don't be afraid to assert yourself, even at the risk that she might want something totally different. It's fine.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Again, she's going to appreciate that you actually had a point of view, even if it's different from hers. Um, so that's my advice to the men.
Yeah, I'm appreciating that because, again, it's just kind of going through my own mind and my own experiences. And my partner the other day said he was having a conversation with another man and they were talking about, me and this other woman and how we're both strong women. And he said something like, do you have to hold her until she cries before anything can get, like intimate and loving? And the other guy was like, yep, totally. And, one of the things I know about myself is that even though I can close down, I'm also really willing and I want to be in that softer place or that more, connected, intimate place. And one of the things that I know working with men is that some of the women they're in relationship with they have not gotten to that willingness, or maybe they don't even know it's possible.
To be in
So
that softer spot, you mean?
yeah, to be in
Yeah.
that softer, more vulnerable, more like, oh, not that I'm not going to go all the way to surrender, like, oh, now I suddenly have to surrender to him.
Right.
But, I can kind of give in a little more and relax into my feminine. And so I'm kind of curious too, for men who are in relationships with women who don't already have that consciousness or that understanding, how do you help them with that?
Well, what I write about in the book is men, you've got to understand, no matter how powerful the woman, that she's the CEO of the company, or this amazing woman you see at Starbucks, and you're blown away and intimidated by her. Every woman has that really vulnerable soft core inside her, somewhere down there.
Yeah.
And I think men don't realize that with strong women. They sort of forget that. I forgot that with my ex-wife. Like,
Right.
I mean, she was so strong, and I forgot about her soft.
Right. And then you relate to her as though she is that other
Yes,
side, that way.
yes, which basically means you relate to her as she's a dude,
Mm-hmm.
and it can feel sometimes like the opposition, and so it's going to have you relating to her in a way that's not going to feel good for her, and is not going to help her access that vulnerable part. So that was what I really cultivated in my last long relationship, was really realizing that, remembering it in the moment, and trying to relate to her from that point of view.
Mm.
That's the number one thing. Like, don't forget, no matter how powerful she is, no matter how fired up she is in the moment, she wants to soften, like you said, Shayna.
Yeah.
And that's a perspective shift for most men.
Yeah, and I could see, we're all different, right? It's not like every woman wants to soften in the same way, or every woman would become the same kind of, feminine style. I think there's so much variety, but I do think that we also, as human beings, have a desire, the feminine part of us, which I believe men have too, right?
Hmm.
Can want to soften and relax and surrender. And I'm curious, as I said that, I was just curious, like, oh, do you ever have men take on that role in a way to feel what it's like on the other side?
Um, well, I think the closest thing I can comment to what you said was, I do teach men about empathy a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually just sent an email to my mailing list around 7 ways to respond when your woman is angry with you.
Mm.
And the second one, and probably the most important one, is responding with empathy. So I go through, what is empathy? Empathy, in my definition, is just actually feeling what the other person is going through. It's not thinking about it, it's not mentally understanding it, but you actually allow yourself to feel it as if it was you.
Yeah.
And when men do that, they will relate to their woman in a lot of different ways. And Shayna, tell me how it lands for you. But my experience is the times that I've responded with empathy in relationship, 8 or 9 out of 10 times she softens. And when I respond with logic or defensiveness or what are you talking about, then like 10 out of 10 times that never works.
Right. It's like then I stay in my head and I stay trying to prove or defend or figure something out or analyze, and it's not helping me get more into my heart or my body.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think the problem for men, why we can't go into that space,
Mm-hmm.
is we often feel like her anger is because of us.
Yeah.
Now, that can happen in 2 ways. One is she's blaming us overtly, and the other is that we're projecting that onto her
Yeah.
out of our own fear. And so this is a real challenge that I would actually want all women to understand is, it's hard for us because we do feel responsible for your upset.
Yeah.
Even those times when really what you just want is us to listen and empathize, and we don't need to fix it, but we make it about us. And that's our challenge as men, is to not make it about us,
Yeah.
to, hold the space, to respond with empathy, to feel what you feel without thinking it's all about us. And,
Right.
we got to get defensive.
Personal affront, or right, that you've done something wrong.
Yeah, exactly. But it is very hard for us, and it's a lifelong practice. I'll say that.
Yeah. I'm curious, as the word body came up, I was just, curious about sex and being in the bedroom. And, one of the things that I know is in your book is, why does a strong man hold back in the bedroom, and how can he, or a man with a strong woman, I should say, how can he learn to lead,
Yeah.
bring that strength into the bedroom?
Yeah. What I've seen is guys are just afraid of rejection. We're ego-bound creatures, sadly, and we get hurt easily. And in the bedroom is where that happens even more so.
Mm-hmm.
So we're afraid of rejection. So I think a lot of men can hold back because they don't necessarily know how to pleasure their woman in a I don't know if reliable way is the way I want to say it, but
Uh-huh.
they don't necessarily know really how to pleasure their woman or take her there. And so they'll kind of hold back, and because if you do something and she says ouch and gets that, scrunched up look on her face
Yeah.
of disgust, like, then it just shuts us down. And for most men, that can kind of end sexuality,
Yeah.
in that moment. So what I say is, I mean, there's an element of boldness, but even before we get to that, it's like, make it a lifelong practice to learn how to pleasure your woman in the bedroom.
Mhm.
Learn her body, learn what works and what doesn't for her body, and which situations, different things might work, that they might not work in other situations, and make that a lifelong study so that you feel confident, her body, how to pleasure her. That's going to open up. And then, after that, then you just take a chance, guys. Like, bring a little boldness, and there's a lot of resources you can tap into. Like in my intro, you mentioned the BDSM, and um, like, you can actually learn a lot from exposing yourself to resources. There's videos, there's workshops, there's coaches where you can, get into a little bit of the edgier play. And you don't have to take it all the way in whips and chains or anything like
Yeah.
that, but you can bring a little bit more boldness by practicing and pushing your own edges. And so I always encourage men to also tap into those resources and expand your own sexual boundaries.
I love that, and I think about when the men I've been with who actually want to know what feels good to me, and
Mhm.
that, we can actually learn together.
Mhm.
It's just so much deeper and more pleasurable. And I also often say to men, like, please don't expect to learn this once or be with one woman and learn something and then go to another woman, or
Mhm.
even the same woman at a different time of the month in her cycle or a different time of the day. Like, we really are so much more complex
Mhm.
than, a male body. And but hopefully that's freeing, because it's like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me if I don't know. I could actually ask, and we could have this,
Yeah.
the intimacy of this conversation.
Yeah. The you know what it's what comes into my mind is like, it's like having good balance. If you have good balance and you're in sports and you get knocked around by other players, you can still stay on your feet. And
Yeah.
I want men to bring that into the bedroom, in the sense of, if she's like, "Ooh, I don't like that," be like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe, now I'll try something different." And you're just able to keep your balance even when she's saying, like, "Ouch," or "I don't like that."
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember plenty of stories from getting to know my last relationship partner, and it took us a while at the beginning. Certain things I might have actually, hurt her accidentally, and but we just learned to work through that together and stay connected, and not get thrown off balance. So
Right.
what
And
they're
that
yeah,
is so precious to be
yeah,
able to work through that together. And I know very well the shame and the, like, the
yeah,
downward spiral of what happens for me when I touch someone and it doesn't feel good. And I'm like, oh, it's being
yeah,
hit in the gut. And but when we get, I think, that shared humanity, I like to say, right, of, oh, that happens for you, that happens for me. So what if we actually are honest about it and vulnerable, and we talk about this, and what would feel better to you and what would feel better to me, and beyond the taking it personally.
yeah, yeah. And it's just burning through that the old cliche of sexual shame.
Yeah.
If it's not shameful to have done it wrong, then you're going to be a lot more balanced about the whole thing, and
Right. So much
robust about the whole
freedom.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I think an element of this is presence, in that, as you're touching your woman, like, don't float off into la la land and just go into the sensual part of it, the touch part of it. Like, watch her facial expressions, and see when she kind of grimaces versus, like, rolls her eyes back. And so, men need to pay attention to your responses, and presence is the key to that.
So beautiful, right? And rather than being in your head of, like, am I doing this right? Is there something
Mhm.
wrong with me? Is she gonna like it? Is she not gonna like it? Right?
Yeah.
Watching out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. It's also a major erection killer when a man is doing that. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it right?
Yeah. Yeah. What would
Ah,
you say, as you think more about this, in all areas, bedroom and beyond, we're thinking about boundaries and men, like you said, knowing what they want and having clarity. How can a man set boundaries in a way that actually helps his woman relax instead of fight back.
Yeah, there's two things I would mention. One is what I mentioned before about desire. You know, you've got to get in touch with your needs, wants, preferences, and boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's number one, you have to have clarity about what's not okay for you, and you have to be okay with standing in that and holding firm. So that's number one. But the more important part that I want to is how you share those boundaries. One of the really important things that David Data talked to me about was, and he taught me was, if you know, if you are maybe doing dominance play with your feminine partner,
Mm-hmm.
you just can't roll up like Christian Grey and not be connected to your heart, because it's not going to feel good to her. Like,
Right.
you may think it's cool and you may think that you're powerful, but it's not going to feel good to somebody that is wanting a real deep love connection with you. And so you have to couple that dominance play with heart. And I think the same thing applies for boundaries.
Yes.
That it's not like, woman, this is how it's going to be. You are not going to do that. Like,
No, that feels
no,
like,
I don't know a woman alive that's, I mean, in most cases, it's going to like, that's going to feel good
yeah,
for her, and
it's
she's going to trust.
abusive.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you grimaced when you heard me
I
say that.
do. I'm like, ah, no.
But if it's delivered with heart and, um, it's like, hey, babe, what I'm noticing is that when this happened, I felt really angry, and I know what I'm needing as a man is X. And so I really can't be in a relationship where this is happening. And how does that land for you? You know?
Mm.
And so, I mean, you can come up with whatever words you want, but it's, you're expressing your inner need, you're expressing what doesn't work. And then even at the end, you're even caring for her by
I love
while
that.
you're drawing the line, you're saying, hey, how does that land for you? Because you're interested in her experience,
Yeah.
because you care.
Right. And because it can't happen without her experience. It can't be a one-sided thing. So the fact that you just brought that strength and that clarity with the caring again in the heart, like you said, and the team of it, this, okay, we're in this as a team, not I'm going to now inform you of how this is going to go.
Right. Now, I'll say one thing. I could do that, and the only thing I'll get is your acquiescence.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just going to create some like hidden resentment, probably deep down in my feminine partner, if I do the my way or the highway thing.
Right.
So
And I
yeah,
can see, like, you might feel powerful as a man doing that, and a woman might, kind of surrender, but she's going to surrender in the way where she's going to more die inside rather than come alive.
yeah, definitely. And I want to clarify for the men.
Yeah.
It's not, don't go softy like, oh, is this okay? That is not what we're saying here.
Uh-huh. Okay, tell them what you're saying.
What's that?
Tell them what you're saying. If it's not that, what is it?
Yeah, it's delivering clarity with love.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it is. So you're not unclear about what you will and will not stand for at all. So you're not kind of half lobbing it over there to see how she's going to respond. So it's not like that. It's just delivered with love and a lot of care. And anybody that's been a parent knows how to do this.
Oh man.
You've done this with your son, I'm sure. I've done it with my kids. It's like tough love for your kids. And so bring it to your relationship. It's such a great skill to bring into a relationship.
Yeah, and I can feel the strength and the self-worth that comes behind the ability to know what you want and to value that, right? That this is actually important, and I'm not just, I can't just give this up because you want something different or you believe something different, that we have some of those non-negotiable experiences.
Yeah, totally. And I want to add one sort of capstone on this topic. Something I've been dealing with. I'm almost even reluctant to share why.
Mm-hmm.
My friend is dealing with it, who is like teetering on the edge of a breakup.
Yeah.
And the advice I actually gave him literally last night when he came over was, you're telling me about this thing that you just can't live with that she's doing. And look, man, you've got to be unafraid to lose her.
Yeah.
You've got to be unafraid to lose her.
Yeah.
In these moments where it's like, I can't live with this.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where most men trip themselves up, is just, they're just too afraid for the relationship to end. And men, I can tell you, I don't know if it's the number one thing, but it sure is up there. The number one thing you can do is be unafraid to lose your partner if um, you are fundamentally not getting what you need to thrive and love.
Yeah. Or you might be afraid, but willing.
Thank you. Great clarification. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Like it might hurt like hell, and you might be like, oh God, I don't want this, and I'm scared, and I don't know if anyone else is ever gonna, be with me or love me in these same ways. And if you're not willing, right, from what you're saying, then you're turning against yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I couldn't have said it better myself, by the way. And you are hurting her because all you're doing is swallowing your anger when you don't do that.
Yeah.
And she's going to feel that. She's going to feel that as a gradual pinching off of the connection and availability. And self-disclosure, I can say that that was actually a dynamic I got caught in a relationship that was important to me, and I learned from it for sure.
Mm. Oh, thank you for the vulnerability of that,
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah.
actually having gone through it and being here on the other side.
Yeah, I've seen firsthand that how it can kill a relationship to not speak your truth, not stand in your truth, and swallow any resulting resentment because
Yeah.
it leads to the end of a relationship in a lot of cases.
And I feel the tenderness of that for everybody, no matter what gender. Like, okay, I don't want to cause conflict, or I don't want to be that guy or that woman or that person, or all the reasons. Actually, I've been working a little bit with Susan Campbell, who does Getting Real.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote about Getting Real and many other books, but really looking at like, okay, what would I have said if I wasn't afraid of the reaction or the response or what might happen?
Mm-hmm.
What would I just naturally have said? I think you said something, alluded to this before too, like something about if you weren't worried, right? Or if in the
Mm-hmm.
bedroom you weren't worried and it wasn't personal and it wasn't all going to mean something about your manlyhood and all of that, right? What would you say or what would you ask?
Yeah,
So
yeah, and I think that it's then the question is, okay, then why are men afraid? And I I think that sometimes they've tried at times,
yeah,
and they didn't, but they maybe didn't do it with heart,
yeah,
and it came across in a way that shut her down. But it wasn't so much your need that shut her down; it was your delivery that shut her down.
yes, it's
I
a
think that,
beautiful, yes,
yeah, it goes back to you got to learn to deliver it with heart. I do. I've been doing some really deep work in terms of heart-based practice for men, and so it's like a big focus for me in my own practice and in my what I coach men right now. But
yeah.
how to go deeper into your heart, and I've got some somatic practices that help a lot. But men, you've got to develop this side of you. It makes everything a lot easier with a feminine partner.
Thank you so much for all of this and for living and breathing and sharing, what you've learned here and in your book, going more in depth into that, and for being a support and, laying out some of those more hard to see or hard to decipher places. Like you said, like you may have brought your truth, but the delivery may have just killed the deeper vulnerability getting across or your needs getting
Mm-hmm.
across. So I love that you're making that distinction. And
Yeah.
what do you want to leave men with
Oh, what do I want to lead men with?
today? What
Yeah,
anything else that you haven't said or that feels important in this moment?
men. The one thing I want the men to believe is everything in their life, or I'll say in their relationship domain, can change and can get better.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's when you start to embody some of these practices that I write about, that Shana coaches and other people, um, your woman's going to feel it, and she, in many cases, will soften because of the way that you're being. And that's one of the things I coach over and over again. She will change when you change. So quit looking at her and blaming her and wondering why she's doing this or that.
Mm-hmm.
Just tell yourself, when I change, when I get more solid, when I get more grounded, when I bring more clarity and structure and create more safety for her, she'll change. And really look at yourself before looking at her. And as an extension of that, if you're in a relationship that's a little rocky, maybe consider stop trying to work it out with her and work on yourself first. Because generally what happens is some of the relationship problems magically get better when you work on yourself.
Mm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for bringing the strength and the clarity paired with the heart and the empathy and the love.
Thank you, Shana.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.